Hello, and welcome to the fourth edition of the Boom Podcast. As always, I bring in some of my favorite people to help you, the business owner, get a handle on different parts of your business, whether it's marketing, sales, fulfillment, employee retention, whatever. And I do not bring people on the show because they don't do anything. They actually produce results and they're given specific lane. And I told them, the guys that come on, my audience is barely treading water. They got water up to their nose. Anything we could do to help them with any part of their business, they will be eternally grateful for. With that said, I bring on a very good friend of mine, Michelle Heath, the CEO, founder of Wall Street. Now, I've known Michelle, this goes back to my podcast with Simon. I think we had two failed episodes that never got aired.
Well, this is going to be the big one.
The Wi-Fi not going to cut out anytime soon. Simon not in the back of a limo.
Oh.
We're going to finish that. And
we're going to do it.
Okay. So then I worked with Michelle on some of her projects with clients she had, one client. And I got to learn a lot about how she thinks about brand, how she supports her clients, and how she helps them, get out of the muck and start connecting with their people. And she's working with some B2B titans, or B2B wannabe titans who want to become titans in their industry. She's the person to go for that. With that said, Michelle, did I miss anything about you?
Oh, well, there's so much to tell, but I think that was a great intro. So thanks, Doug.
So let's go back a little bit about your career before you launched your business.
Yeah.
Just so you could throw out some street credibility here. Where did you start your career, and what were some of the stops you made along the way before Wall Street?
For sure. Well, I graduated from Boston University, the Questrom School of Business. I kind of had this image of myself like going right into being an executive leader, like on the cover of Forbes magazine, the whole thing. And then
Did you ever make it to Forbes magazine?
I haven't made it yet, but yet. There's goals, right? We've got to have like big goals. So when I got out of school, as a woman in business, it was tough. So, what does a woman in business do at that time, unless you were an accountant or a very specific type of, discipline, you were an admin. So I went to a company called Fidelity Investments, which is a privately held, Fortune 500 company. And at the time, I knew nothing about financial services. I knew nothing about anything. And I worked my way up. So I started working on a sales team with 25 sales guys, did everything from type letters to pick up laundry and sandwiches and book travel arrangements and juggle, 25 people's calendars. And went into my boss one day and was like, okay, what's next? I'm ready. Like, give me something.
What were those 25 sales guys like? Were they the classic sales guys we see on TV, or Mad Men, or were they a different kind of sales team?
At the time, it was a lot of like what you hear about and see about on TV. It was pretty rough and tumble. Like as a woman, there was.
So how did you manage all that?
Oh, it was complete chaos half the time. But, I was like, I'm going to prove my way. I'm going to show these guys that, I'm more than a pretty face, or I'm more than, a woman, and that I really, I'm smart and I can do all of these things that I've set out to do for myself. So it was a lot of proving. I worked, I don't even know how many hours. I just worked nonstop. I was there Saturdays. I came in on Sundays. I just worked and worked and worked and worked and worked. And the challenge at that time was that there weren't a lot of female role models. So there weren't a lot of people for me to look at and say like, oh, I want to be like that. Or a lot of the women who I did look to, they were acting more like men. And I was like, I want to just be me. But it didn't really work that way at that time. So I just had to prove it and prove it and prove it and keep asking for it and earning it. So grew my career. I went from Fidelity to a company called Manulife Financial, which is a Canadian life insurance company. And then I ended up going back to Fidelity Investments because I needed more. And every time it was, rising through the ranks, climbing the ladder. And then I went to JP Morgan, where I had a big job running a whole marketing division, a product division, something new called user experience, which was all about really connecting to the customers. Yeah, massive. And we, at the time, were divesting the business and decided we were going to sell our business to a suitor who ended up being E-Trade Financial. So I was part of this deal team for, over $1 billion acquisition, and saw the good, the bad, the very, very, very ugly, and decided that that was not my path. I got to the top of the ladder. I looked out and I said, you know what? I want to spend time with my kids. I want to be closer to the customer. I want to get my hands dirty. I want to roll up my sleeves. And that's not going to happen for me there. So I left, and I decided I'm going to go kind of find myself. I was pregnant with my son. I went to work at a bunch of startups. I did some consulting work, and I said, I want to be in the startup world. So I worked for 2 startups. The first one was a huge failure. And with failure comes
I didn't know that part. I think I missed that part in all about talk. What was your first startup called?
The first startup was a company called MatchMine, and it was a media recommendations company. And so we were trying to build something called a match key, where people could kind of plug it into the places that they go on the internet. So today you're kind of like, oh, I understand what that is. But at the time, which was in 2006, we were so ahead of the market that we had a really hard time finding product market fit. 2008 came, and everything just kind of combusted, and I ended up, drowning my sorrows over margaritas at Olay in Cambridge. But then I was like, all right, I got to try it again, And so the second startup was a foreign exchange, basically a social network for foreign exchange customers. And we built that, and we sold that to a Canadian company. And I decided for me, it was time for me to just jump off that train and start my own business. So that's what I did. And I hung a shingle at Grove Street in 2013. And 9 years later, here we are. Still here. It's kind of crazy. Yeah, it is. When I think about it, it's like, I remember being such that newbie in 2013, holy crap, what am I doing? I have no clue how to run it. I've been in these startups, running these startups. I've been in big companies. I've seen how these things work. But then when you really have to put it in practice for yourself, it's like, holy crap, how am I going to do this? But you figure it out. You make a lot of mistakes, and you just, you figure it out as you go, and then you celebrate all the wins. And hopefully 9 years later, you can look back on all the things that you learned along the way.
I love it. So I brought you on, as I said in the intro, because I see you as, number one, as a marketing expert, but more specifically, as a brand expert, and even more specifically than that, as somebody who uses customers to guide the brand, which is quite refreshing, because I told you during our warm-up, which nobody got to see, we're going to try to replicate it. That I wrote a post probably 2 hours ago. It wasn't directed at you, but I kind of figured that if she saw that, oh, is she talking about me? No, because I don't consider you a brand strategist. You're much more than that. But I said, brand strategists are the Pied Piper of the marketing world. And then I had a video where I go into, I've seen brand strategists that clients hire, where I have to sit and listen to them give a presentation about something that makes no sense to me. They clearly thought it up out of the clear blue sky, and it had nothing to do with customers or feedback that they got from the audience or what kind of comments people left on their Facebook. Nothing. It had everything to do with their hypothesis about what their brain should be, and we're going to test it. See if it works. If it doesn't, it's not my fault, it's yours. So, and that was my irritation with that, and my counter to that was, you want to use my brand strategy It's actually, I use the audience to guide my brand, meaning there's lots of posts to me. And I shoot to share some posts of me. And the more people resonated with that part of me, the more I just kind of just moved on from the others and just kind of gave back and tailored websites and language and content to fit what people seem to not just enjoy because they wanted to be a fan, but enjoyed because they wanted to buy. Okay, there's a difference there. We'll talk about that in a minute. So that was my recommendation. If you look in the comments, your typical different mechanisms come into play. That, well, you know, B2B sales, they don't have time to hear from the audience. They have to get going from the ground up. And you know what? I'm going to ask Michelle that question. So I didn't say anything. I just said, thumbs up. Now, let me put it to you. When a company wants to rebrand or refresh, or maybe they're not even aware it's brand. Something stuck, something not working, they're not connecting with the audience. They bring you in. And when you tell them, we have to build your brand, we have to lead with brand. What is the most common response you hear or the common objections you hear when you say something like that?
Well, usually there's an eye roll, like, oh, brand, oh, right? I mean, everything that what you talked about in your post today, it gets me fired up because I feel like everything that is, what has happened to brand, if, brand has been canceled. Nobody wants to talk about brand. Executives don't want to talk about brand because they think, I'll tell you why. Number one, they think brand is a logo and a color palette. They're wrong. Number two, they've been burned by a lot of these people you talk about who, have come in selling some big brand game and they're left holding the bag on nothing that they can implement. And number three, brand feels intangible. People want things that are tangible. Like, you give me, you write an awesome email for me and I can go send that right now to my customers. And brand, it feels like this amorphous process. And so for a lot of executives, that's kind of scary. All of those things are scary. One, I don't really understand what it is. Number two, I've been burned by people selling me, this pile of crap. And number three, it's like, what am I going to get? Like, what am I actually going to be able to do with this? And so what I think of, when I think of brand, I take it up one level, which is, I help businesses grow faster. That's what I do. Okay. So if you want to grow faster, whether, there's Fortune 500 companies that I work with, they want to grow faster. They want to get from 30 billion to 50 billion. And then there's startups that are going from seed to A round. They want to grow faster. Growing faster, there's lots of ways to do that. And brand is, think of it as like tools in your toolbox. It's a mechanism and a framework that helps you unleash your customer mindset, your company mindset, and the competitive white space that you can own in your market. And when you
really interesting, it's really interesting. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Can you see how fired up I am?
The thought that I'm going to lose this thought. The thought that comes to mind is bringing this strategy and these emails and things like that are tactics, right? So when people are like, when CEOs or owners are like, write a great email and go find me customers. That's a tactic. That's a strategy. And there's lots of tactics out there that can work, but it seems to miss the mark because it's not backed up by a brain strategy.
That's correct. That's correct.
Am I right so far?
You're right.
Hearing it.
You're right. You're totally right. And we have this process and it has these different steps, and it's like, first we talk to the customer, then, and then we understand like the company mindset. And then we do this competitive white space. And then we define the strategy. And then we go to the market. And like every time someone goes, oh, I'm all the way on number 5, because they didn't do 1 through 4.
Go all the way back.
Right. So now it's like, when I say taking you back, it's not even taking you back. It's sort of like understanding where you are right now. Where are your customers right now? And to your point, it's great to have fans, but if your fans aren't buying, it's like, how do we mesh the two of those things and really put a laser focus on your target market? And that's what we find a lot of times when we go in, especially in, very early stage to like mid-size companies, where you've been pointing your arrow kind of all over the place because you're like trying to get deals and you're trying to create momentum and you're trying to get things going. But if you don't have a strong brand, your sales cycle is going to slow down. And so at some point you have to pick and you have to say, okay, who are the people that are our biggest fans? They love us the most. They're in the center of our bullseye, and we're just going to go after them. And then you can go talk to them. Go talk to your customers. The number of CEOs and business leaders I talk to that do not talk to their customers. They listen to customer service calls. Good. They talk to the customer service people. Good. But if you listen to like someone like Mark Benioff, the CEO of Salesforce, he's out in the field 364 days a year. He's not in the office. He's out talking to customers. He's out hearing what's your pain? What are your problems? What are you trying to solve? And then knowing not only how do we solve those today, but like, ooh, geez, it sounds like the customer is going here. How do we move with them so that you don't get out of lockstep? Because when you get out of lockstep with your customers, that's when you have a gap. Gaps are friction, and that's where growth stalls, is when you have those kind of gaps that get in the way of growth. So the number one thing is that voice of the customer, knowing who your customer is, where you want to focus, talking to them, unearthing all of these amazing words that they use and things that they think about and motivators and intentions that they have, and then mapping those back to where are you trying to go as a company? And how is the customer going to get you there? So really, the way that I think about building a great business is being customer first. Yeah. And it's easy to say, oh, we want to have, we're obsessed about our customers and we want to have this and we want to have that. But are you really doing that? Are you walking that talk? And brand is the framework to help you walk the talk and help you actually put all those things into action.
You brought up something interesting that I work with a lot of solo professionals, so this happens on the solo side too, which is they'll write a piece of copy or they'll write a sales page, and I read it and I'm like, how do you know that's true? How do you know that pain point is actually true?
Right.
Oh, because I know my customer. Oh, no. Where did you find that piece, that exact language? And come to find, it comes from their own head. And like, right. No, you're not going to write any landing page, any website that came from your own head. I need you to go, especially on the solo side, on Reddit, on chat forum, talk to your past client, talk to people you collaborated with, and ask these specific questions.
Exactly.
Talk to people on the research side. Look at the language they use and use that.
That's right.
Now, you're a little bit bigger than me, meaning you work more upstream. How do you talk to customers when there's so many of them?
Well, I think your point is so great, Doug, because it's like, one of our clients is trying to get from 5 million to 10 million in revenue. And when we looked at who they're talking to, so their target customers, we started, to sort of unearth, like, who are these personas, who are these customer segments? And what we found out was that the marketing team had kind of built the personas to who they were. So it'd be like me saying like, oh, I'm my buyer. I like this, I like this, I like this, I like this. And I was like, are you sure those are really your buyers? And they sort of said, I don't know. Are they our buyers? And all of a sudden it was like, we don't know if those are our buyers. And so they were using words that, the marketing team had come up with, who they thought their buyers were. And then we went out and we did, qualitative research and quantitative research through a bunch of different mechanisms. We bring all this data back and then we said, here's what your customers actually said. These are their actual words. These are the things that are resonating with them over and over and over again. You're saying this, your customers, this, what's resonating with them is this, and now we need to bridge the gap. Once you do that and you shift to using the words that your customers use, you know, it's like.
Are you using like focus groups? Are you using surveys? How are you? I know there's many
There's
different
lots of
case
different
studies.
ways.
If you
Yeah.
pick one,
Yeah.
what is the typical way that Growth Street goes in and recommend or even does it themselves to get the customer voice?
We do not do focus groups. So, you know, I spent I grew up, you know, in my career hosting focus groups, doing lots in focus groups. And for the type of insights that I want to hear as the growth strategist, I can't get those from a focus group. A focus group is going to give me, you get a lot of groups speak, you get a lot of group think, and like, I don't want that. So we do what are called IDIs. They're in-depth interviews that are one-on-one. So it's me with you, you know, for usually 30 to 45 minutes. And I have a list of questions that I have worked through with my client. And we've said, okay, these are the things that we want to learn. And I begin, and it's kind of like a therapy session and a business session and, you know, a strategy session sort of all combined, because what I'm doing is I'm listening for the threads. So someone says, you know, I ask a question about a motivator, or, you know, what they love about your product or your service or your brand or something like that. And they tell me something maybe that I haven't heard, and my antenna goes up and I'm like, ooh, why did they say that? Can you tell me more about that? What does that mean to you? You know, how does that affect the way that you might purchase something? How did you consider looking at other competitors? Why did you choose this brand and not another brand? And all of a sudden you start getting these trails of threads, and we start pulling them together. So there's a whole qualitative aspect of that. For some of our clients, we only do the qualitative. I'll say it depends, because it sort of depends on what we need, but sometimes only qualitative. In other cases, there's a qualitative component and a quantitative component, where we will do, you know, if they have a very large customer base, we're doing surveys, or we're doing other types of qualitative research where we're getting more, you know, a bigger data set. And then we're mapping the qualitative to the quantitative to see kind of how they compare or how they add to each other. In some cases, what we find is, you know, we go into clients oftentimes where they've done, you know, they've built out these archetypes, or these customer, whatever you want to call them, a customer profile or persona, something. But either they're not based on any data, or they've been only based on data. So then if you only have the data, oftentimes you only have the demographics. So I know you're Doug Lawson, you know, where you live, how old you are, you know, what kind, you know, maybe what kind of car you drive. But what does that tell me about how you think? What does that tell me about how you make purchase decisions? What does that tell me about the brands you buy, or the motivators that you have, or the things that really inspire you to purchase? Tells me nothing. So if you have data, it's great. But what we find oftentimes for our clients is that they don't have what I call the psychographics or the ethnographic data, which is all that kind of gray matter stuff, where I get in there and I'm like, let me add it, you know, let me pull out these threads. Let me pull out this information.
Let's expand on psychographics for the artists, because I think they get a little confused. So the traditional way that most people describe their avatar, how much money do they make, how old they are, what gender do they identify, that is not a psychographic.
No, that's a demographic.
And you're talking more about personality. Expand on psychographics.
Yeah, we call them, you know, motivators and intentions and behaviors. We look at other brands that they like. You know, we did a big project for a commercial construction company, and we got in there and we said, you know, what kind of coffee do your customers drink for breakfast? And they were like, what does this have to do with anything? Well, it has a lot to do with things, right? Because are you like,
you can tell a person, you can tell what kind of a person you are by the coffee you drink.
100, like, what do you drink?
Maxwell House, Folger. To me, you're budget conscious. And you're not in it for the taste, you're in it for the cake. If
Yeah.
you're fair trade, single store, you are very conscious of where your products come from.
Yes.
The story is important to you. And then you got the far end, which is the drip coffee, and then you're a taste connoisseur.
Yes.
So whenever people tell me what kind of coffee they drink, it's a bad habit for me. I just immediately identify you as a certain type of person. It's not
100%.
wrong for me. I mean, that's
No,
probably very snobby.
it's not snobby at all, because like that is what brand is a way to identify, right? So at its essence, brand for a business, brand creates a connection to your customer. It is the bridge to your customer, and it's something that customers identify with. Like, why do people love Peloton? Because it makes them feel something. It makes them feel something about themselves. They identify with this thing. Why do people love Starbucks? They hold
I
this
don't know
cup.
why people love Starbucks, but
They hold the
you
cup
love
in their hand.
Starbucks, or
I love Starbucks, but I love like dark roast coffee. Like
they
so
do dark roast.
they do a
really
good dark roast, but I don't like watered down coffee. Like I don't have any time for that. So I think, I'm saying it kind of flippantly, but when you start to really think about what, your customer is a person who wakes up in the morning, checks their phone, gets in the shower, has a coffee, goes, whatever. And so how do you start to understand your customer as a person? And so to me, being customer first is where businesses have the advantage, because when you can really understand your customer as a person, and wow, they're interacting with, imagine how many brands you interact with all day long. It's, for me, some days it feels like 50 brands, you've got
just right in front of me. I have
just
names,
right in front of you.
Phones, man.
Yeah.
The name of my mic. Those are brands that I made a decision to buy.
And so something about that brand got you to buy, whether you heard about it from somebody else, like to your point about reviews and, the dark web and the whole thing, and dark social, and, it is real. And how do you really understand your customer as a person so that you can connect with them, knowing they have all this choice? They have all this choice. If you're, a B2B SaaS software company, I just went through this whole thing buying a time tracking tool. There's, 100, and none of them can really articulate why they're different. Well, like, then you don't really know me. You don't know, like, you haven't really put your bullseye on me. Like, why are you going to get me? How are you going to get me to buy? How are you going to get me to choose you over everyone else, when all of this stuff, for many product led companies out there, they're selling commodity products. Like, someone can come in and copy your technology any day. They can't copy your brand. Your brand is that connection to the customer, and nobody can copy that when you do it right. So it really becomes more than, kind of circling all the way back to your post today about, the Pied Piper. There's plenty of that. And there's lots of people just thinking brand is, graphics and colors and, words on paper.
Branding. I think people keep forgetting.
They keep forgetting.
Branding.
It's branding. It's not brand. Brand is the ultimate growth strategy, and you can choose to use it or not. And if you don't choose to cultivate your brand, what will happen? Your customers, your market will choose for you. And so then they decide, oh, this is the Doug Lawson brand. And you're like, wait, that's not me. That's not me. Like, you're so good at being so specific about, your brand and who you are. But for a lot of companies, they don't want to make the investment in being specific about who they are, in talking about who they are, and creating that surround sound about who they are. And so then the market just decides for you. So you have a choice. Your business is your brand, and your brand is your business.
One of the, we've talked about this before in the past, about Apple and how powerful of a brand Apple is. But one thing that Apple did it right, but they also didn't predict something. There's no way they could predict it. So when somebody tells you that they're an Android user, your mind classifies them. I'm not talking about if you work for Apple, I'm talking about a day-to-day thing. I've heard
Yeah.
it so many times that if, oh, I'm an Android user. Typically, when people say that, they're very defensive about being an Android user.
Yeah.
I've
Totally.
had people tell me if I see a green text bubble, I'm not responding to it. Which is weird. Apple did not predict that, but on the other hand, they should have set the stage for it.
Yes.
Well, Apple's cool and edgy and artistic. Where Android is budget friendly and cheap. Honestly, they both cost money, But it's
Totally.
weird how we identify tribes based on the phone you use. That
100%.
it's sort of, you're right about that. You can only control brands so much. And sometimes you create the stage where they choose the brand based on their own narrative. Right?
Oh,
Not
yeah.
like Steve Jobs came out and said, hey, if you're an Android user, you're cheap. He never said that. He said, this is for the revolutionary, this is for the independent people, whatever. I forget the speech.
Yes. Yeah.
Do you find that fascinating how we've created tribes based on this device?
Yes. But, yeah, I mean, if you listen to Steve Jobs talk, when he talks about innovation and when he talks about building products and when he talks about all of these things, they're all rooted in the customer. And they're, and look, he is a visionary beyond visionaries, right? So, but when he talks about the customer, he talks about their desires and their wants and their needs. And he talks about products that they built that were a huge flop because, and he said it was like some printer product or something that they had built. And he was like, it was a huge flop because we didn't understand the customer. We didn't understand like who we were building this for. We were just building a product. And if you're just building a product, you don't have your bullseye. So then you don't really know who you're building it for. And so when you think about,
I kind of feel like that. I don't even know. First of all, I don't even know who makes Android.
yeah.
So that's also my first issue. The second issue, I kind of feel like Android just built Android to counter Apple.
Yeah.
They didn't have a story or a narrative about Android.
That's right.
They just built it to sell a product that rivaled Apple, and that was the story.
That's right.
Do you feel that way?
I do. And I think that, that Apple has built something that's so visceral and something that people just, you connect with their brand. Like, why do we pay so much more for, this computer than there's a litany of choices? And because it has the Apple on it, my daughter's like, I will only have an iPhone. Why? She's 18. You could have any phone you want. But they know. And I think, and, generationally, the generations coming are even more brand conscious. So now they're expecting more from the brand because they've been brought up on all these brands now. So I think that businesses have this opportunity. When you start a business, you have an opportunity right in your lap, and that's your brand. You have your customers, and then you have like all the things that you do all day long. And when you really figure out how to use your customer as the tailwind, that's when you really can unleash the power of brand. And not all businesses can think that way. A lot of them are just so deep in the product development. And Steve Jobs will talk about that. He'll say, like, we got too mired in the, the features and the functions and the bells and the whistles. You have to pick yourself up and look ahead with your customer. Where are they going? Like, oh, you're going on this other road. You got to be in lockstep together. And it's the only way for you to be able to innovate is by knowing where your customer is trying to go. How are you going to get them there? So I think that there's a lot of opportunity. Brand has, had a kind of a bad rap. Like, I want to rebrand brand because I really feel like it plays this very, very central role in any company's growth trajectory if you can unleash it as power and unleash it in a different way than the way we think about just branding or other things that are kind of more down the stream in the tactics.
Yeah, you mentioned way back at the start of our talk about brand is that brand actually shorten the sales cycle If it's
Yes.
done right, how? I mean, we don't, it's probably a little complex, but what is a customer-driven brand? How is a customer-driven brand different than a company who just relies on dumping a lot of money into paid ads and hoping for the best?
Well, I look at it like, what kind of game do you want to play? Okay. So, I grew up in financial services, on trading desks and, very close to the stock market, right? And they were like, the guys that were always in for the short wins, right? They were like the pikers. They were like, we're in, we're out, we're in, we're out, we're cashing in, we're cashing out.
That's the Wolf of Wall Street vibe.
Wolf of Wall Street vibe, right? And these guys win big and they lose big, right? And there's these big swings and it's unpredictable and it's like chaos, And then there's the guys that play the long game. And they're going slow and steady, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you're just standing still. It means you're winning, but you're winning over time. And so, I don't have any interest in that Wolf of Wall Street, short game, just like dumping tons of money in ads. And, because what's happening and what's been happening is that might work for a little while until it stops working. And then what? And so for all of these businesses that are beginning and they're like, we don't want to spend money on brand. We don't need a brand. We don't need a brand. Well, Eric Wan from Zoom, like how we're communicating right now, he is known for saying, if you do not have a strong brand, your sales cycle is too slow. So if you're trying to get your sales cycle to speed up, you need momentum, okay? And the only way that you're going to create momentum is if you have a laser focused strategy on a specific target audience that you're going to go deep, deep, deep. And then you just know everything that they need to say, to see and hear and believe and understand. This buyer's journey can be all over the place. So how are you there when they're ready? This is like the long content strategy that, so few want to play because it takes time. But if you wait to start building your brand, by the time all those short win things stop working, you have to start. And you could be 2 years in to your life cycle and your investors are like, where's the money, people? What are we doing? What are we doing next? And then you're going to scramble and you can't build brand's not fast. We bring the giddy up to build the surround sound, but it takes time, and that's the long game. So to me, it's like, the best way to do this for companies that really want to be able to grow and they really want to be able to shorten those sales cycles or make their sales cycles more efficient is knowing your customer and then being able to really put together that differentiated brand strategy that's going to create all of that surround sound and really help you build that momentum. And you can be doing other things at the same time, but you're building your brand because that's really the long game. That's how
this just my experience. I'm wondering if you had a similar experience. There are certain companies that embrace brand better than others. And typically those that can't seem to get their hands on it are those that are very engineering type of mindset. They need direct attribution for every single thing you do. They don't like gray area. They don't like the black, so dark, so that's everybody's starting to call it now.
That's
They
right.
hate that stuff. They want direct attribution for every act you ever perform. And on a smaller scale, when I work with those types, it's like you can't measure everything. Only thing you need to be measuring, for me personally, is your revenue going up after a set time of month. Then your brand, your content marketing is working. Worrying about all these little things in between, it's kind of missing the forest for the trees. Is that your sort of experience? Do you find engineering science type of company struggle with brand the most? And the other types are more open to it and can run with it quicker.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes we'll go into companies where, the CEO, the CMO, the C-level are looking at, these dashboards or spreadsheets with, I mean, every possible like minute detail on attribution and CAC and lifetime value. I
They
mean,
got HubSpot up. They got Salesforce. They
it's
got,
everything. It's everything. And so, the way that I look at this is, what is the most important data that's going to drive your business? And to your point, like, we're all here to generate revenue for the company. Like, that is the end goal, is right. We're trying to build, a revenue machine. And when, oftentimes what I see is the companies that have like all those spreadsheets and all those numbers, and they're tracking in the minutia of the day to day, is because they don't have alignment between sales and marketing. So what often, and I am, marketer at heart, salesperson at heart, as you saw from my post, I sold Kirby vacuums door to door. I grew up in sales organizations.
You actually have both. When I look at
Yeah.
you're not a pure marketer.
No.
A business person.
Yeah.
And more in sales and marketing. Oh, these two things that you leverage.
That's right.
Revenue.
And what happens in a lot of organizations is it becomes like sales and marketing, and so sales is like, the sales are down, we don't have enough leads, there's always some sales problem. And then the marketers are like, wow, we're ticking and tying attribution to every single sales channel, and they're like down here in the weeds. And so you begin to pull those two disciplines apart that really need to be able to work together. So sales has a goal. They have a goal to bring in, I don't know, $5 million in new revenue this year. That's the goal. So now marketing, that's the goal. And so what can sometimes happen is, so marketing has their own goal, sales has their own goal, everybody's got their own goals. Laddering up to that bigger goal of like, okay, the eye on the prize is $5 million in revenue. How are we going to do it? Sales and marketing working together. Who are the target customers? Who are these buyers? What do they need to hear from us? How are we going to, when we can get those organizations aligned and working together, we get out of this like ticking and tying on every single number. Because, what I find for these executives is like, they're exhausted. They're exhausted because the numbers aren't going to tell you what to do. They can't tell you what to do. If I look at the numbers yesterday and the numbers today and it went up by $5, what do? I don't know. I guess I keep going. Do I change it? I don't know. You can't, it's too micro of a lens. So we've got to have, there's a place for micro, but we've got to have this more macro view of, we need to get this organization to achieve $5 million. And how are we going to do that? With everybody rowing together in the boat, going in the same direction. And for a lot of these businesses that we come in to help, it's an alignment problem. Like, my husband calls it like, we're a chiropractor for your business. He's like, we sort of like, straighten the things out that are like not working correctly so that you can go, run the marathon or whatever. But that's really what it is. Like, sometimes these small adjustments can make such a big difference to get you out of the trees so you can actually like appreciate like the forest and see where you're trying to go.
So we have 5 minutes left. I want to take a slight shifting gear and talk about you as a business owner, okay? Because myself and a lot of other people are practically running a little small business.
Yeah.
You probably know as well as anybody, there's ups and downs, there's struggle. Yeah. What has been the one thing since 2013 that allowed you to stay in the game and maintain? Is there a mentor you had? Is there a mindset that you have? Or is it a strategy that you use? What would you advise a small business owner who's going through some hard times and trying to figure out, is it time to get out? Or should I just continue on? So how did Michelle tackle the peaks and valleys of having a business?
Well, that we might need another hour for that therapy session, Doug. and a glass of whiskey or something.
Whatever, bring it on.
But I would say, you know, when you're running a business, the highs can feel super high and the lows can feel super low. Like when you're in like that, you know, the valley of disillusionment and you're like, oh my God, like, am I actually going to make it? Like, is this actually real? Like, what if this is not real? What if this is just me talking to me? And and for me, you know, what I learn from other people, like I love, you know, I mean, you know me, it's like, it's so much of who I am to want to go and ask for help. I'll say, however, early in my business, it was hard for me to ask for help because I felt like I'm supposed to have all the answers. Like, you know, I'm this growth strategy consultant and I'm coming in to tell you how to run your business.
I'm in the exact same way.
Yeah,
Yeah, believe me, that
right?
makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, you know. So you feel like you're supposed to have all the answers, but it is impossible for you to have all the answers because you don't know. There's all these things that you just don't know. And so what I found is, you know, surrounding myself with people like you that I could be like, Doug, can you just like look at this for me and give me your advice and tell me what you think? It is like the most meaningful thing to help me dig myself out of my ditch. I'd say that has been a big thing for me, is like knowing when to ask for help. And I think, you know, having the confidence to not second guess yourself, like to go with your gut. A lot of the executives I work with are looking for the data to give them the answers. So they're like, well, we need to go get more data. We don't have enough data. I can't decide. I don't know. Should we go this way? Should we go this way? I don't have the data. I'm like, what do you think you should do? They know. You know what to do. It's in there. It's in your gut. And it's in there. And so sometimes, I mean, it sounds so simple to be like, listen to your gut, because, you know, you hear that a lot, but it is so true. And your gut knows where to lead you, and having the confidence to say, this is why we're doing that. Maybe you have the data to support it. And sometimes you don't. Sometimes early you can't possibly have all the data to know which direction to go in. And so I'd say the third thing is, you know, like listening to your customers. Like if I get in like that down, you know, in the dip, we do a lot of interviews with our customers, our clients, and I'll listen to those. And I'll listen to them say like, you know, this is why we love working with Growth Street. This is how they helped us solve such a huge problem to unlock us to the next level. And I'm like, oh, right. We totally do that, you know, and it gives you sometimes that motivation and confidence. And a lot of times you're listening for new things, or you can be like, oh, okay, you know what? They were talking about it as this. I was thinking about it as that. Maybe with these new customer words, it's going to unlock a new idea for me to get out of my own head. So, you know, finding the resources to help you get out of your own head, have the confidence in your gut, and go talk to your customers. If you don't know, or you feel like you're not sure where to go, your customers have the answers. You know, they've already bought, they've already been delighted.
Go back to the why they bought.
Go back to why. Ask them why. How do you describe my value? How do you describe my value? And they'll say,
I think too many people have too much pride to ask people that kind of a question.
Ask. And you know what else you'll hear? Because I always ask, you know, what could we do different? What could we do better? And I just did a call with one of our customers of what could we do different and better? And she was like, I'm so surprised you're asking that. I said, why? And she said, because no one ever wants to hear that. Everybody wants to hear, oh my God, you're so great. And I love
that
it.
That doesn't help me. If you told me I'm great when I'm struggling, that doesn't tell me anything.
It doesn't tell me. It's like, oh, you know what? This process improvement would have actually been better for us. I'm like, you know what? Can we talk about that for a minute? I would love to hear more about what you think. And then I came back to the team and I was like, you know, I got this great feedback on how we can fix this. So I think that open-mindedness to knowing where and when to ask for help. And, you know, if you don't
go with your gut.
Yeah. And go with your gut and just, you know, have the confidence to keep going.
Yeah, you know, I know we're wrapping up, but, you know, if anybody who's listening to me thinks I've got it all together, you'd be sorely mistaken. I mean, you know, I don't always share what happened behind the content. And that's for a reason. I don't personally, I don't feel that I should be sharing my ups and downs as a business person.
Mm,
My content is about you and your
yeah.
problem and your dream outcome. So I am very conscious of making sure the spotlight is on you, even though
Yeah.
I might use some personal stories, but it's not about me. So, but every business owner I've ever spoken to has gone through hard times,
Yeah.
and I find the ones that get through it take a moment, take a deep breath, and resist the urge to just start rattling the cage.
Yes.
And sort of what you're doing, try to assess where you can go. And typically, it comes from your guy. I mean, 2 months ago, I was in a really low valley in my business. You would have never known that. But my first reaction was to do everything. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And then I had to stop myself. No, I'm not going to do that. What is it that I should be doing more of that's already
Yes.
working?
Yeah.
And just do that for now. And then
Right.
add that. So it's really interesting because I keep a tight look what's happening behind this camera.
Mm.
I'm not trying to paint a false impression. It's just that this isn't my content. It's not about my business.
That's right.
You
Right.
know what I
And
mean? So it's hard for me to explain that. So
no,
you
you're
see
right.
business culture, that's more applicable. But for me, whether I deliver for you or not is more important than how my business is doing.
Right. Right.
And I
I
think a
do.
lot of people, especially young copywriters, when they reach out to me, think I'm on this trajectory that looks like this. I
Yeah.
mean, if only you knew. If only
If
you knew. It's
only.
not like
Well,
that.
I think it is, in our world of, everything you see on social media is true, right? So no, I'm joking, it's like if you see it on social media, you see everybody and they're like, on their yachts and on their vacations and they're doing this and they're doing great. And then behind the scenes, they're like, but you can't see that. And to me, I'm a super authentic sharer. So when I share like my LinkedIn content, it's a lot of it is about the things that haven't worked or the things that I learned the hard way, because I don't want people to have to learn the hard way. I want them to just be able to like get over the bump and figure it out. And if they can learn something from what I learned, that's going to help them grow their business faster. So, I think if more of us, sharing some of those things that you've learned, the things that it just helps everybody else get better. And it's just being authentic and real. You don't, it's like just because you're having a bad, a dip or you're a bad month or whatever, that's life, that's real. And I think, getting more real is kind of what we all need.
Yeah. Business is a brutal place to be. It's both very exciting and both very scary at the
Yeah.
same exact time. You really have to weather hard times
Yeah.
with grace, I think, instead of taking it out on people around you or
Yes.
and yourself.
Oh
You got
yeah.
to find a way to go through the peaks and valleys. I've never met somebody who's on a straight path to the
No,
moon in
no,
business. It's pretty
no.
rare.
No, and if they are, like, be skeptical of that. I mean, you and I have seen plenty of that on LinkedIn. There's people who will sell you all of their courses and books and wares and this and that because they're the king of this or the queen of that or and I would be suspect of that because it's not all roses. It's just not. And you're going to have tough patches and you're going to have times where you fail, like talking about the startup that failed. Like I was so embarrassed about that for so long. And then I met with an investor and he's like, why are you not talking about that? He's like, that is such a powerful learning. And there's so much good that think of all the things that you learned that now you can advise your clients, do not do that. And I was like, oh, I guess you're right. But we take all these things so personally that we were like, oh, I don't want to talk about this or don't, now just like let it all out there because
So you're telling me I should talk more about my business struggle
yeah,
and success. I'm curious.
yeah.
You would want to learn about that. Oh, you
I,
don't
you
want
know
to
what?
hear about it.
I think that, and you have your content strategy, so I'm not gonna, tell
No,
you
no,
to change
I'm
it.
just curious.
But I would say
Would
that,
I make you devalue me as a provider
oh my
or
God,
make
no.
you trust me more?
Well, that's, I was just gonna say that. I feel like I trust you more because I'm like, oh wow, he's actually saying like he did something and it didn't work. But then you probably figured out how to do it better because you're you. Like you're not gonna be like, oh, that failed, I'm a failure. You're gonna be like, why did that fail? I'm gonna learn how to do it better. And like that's why your clients hire you, because you're so good at that. And look, we're in the business of, there is no freaking silver bullet for any of this work that we do. We know this, right? There's nothing that's like, I know when I send this thing, we're going to have, the cash register ringing. Sometimes it works and there's times when it doesn't work, and we're testing and learning and trying and, optimizing and putting all that stuff
And
back into
sometimes it
the,
works and you have no idea why.
you don't know why, right? So I do think that vulnerability, at least for me, is where I can trust. I can say like, okay, well, I know, like she's saying like there's been ups and downs and this may not work and we're going to have to do this the hard way. Like that way I'm not selling you a false bill of goods. It's not like I'm coming in there and then I'm going to be, show you this process and you're like, well, I thought you said it was going to be all roses the whole way. It's like, no, this is going to be hard work and we're going to have to roll up our sleeves and test and try things and learn from our customer. And so I feel like, at least for me, the trust component of that is so important because, there's a lot of mistrust out there because people have just been sold a lot of crap. It takes us right back to where we started our conversation, I suppose. And,
Amen. All right, my friend, this was a fantastic conversation. I hope we have another one in
I
a couple
can't wait.
months just to tackle some companies. But if you all want to reach out to Michelle, I'll leave a link to her LinkedIn in the description and her website to Growth Street in the
Yes.
description. As always, please feel free to reach out to her if you think she could be of help to you
Yes.
and your B2B company.
Yes.
So thank you, Michelle.
All right. And if you want the giddy up to grow faster, I'm your girl. All right, Doug. Thank you, my friend.
Bye, folks.